All right, so where I left off yesterday, I was cleaning up the shoulder part, making it a little bit more seamless and kind of fit the whole profile of the pot. So I'm still leaving a couple of places kind of loose and with that seam. Just I may get rid of it later if I don't like it, but for right now I'm gonna leave it. And I've let it sit out just a little bit so this curved part, the dome part, is a little more firm. So right now I'm gonna push on it a little bit. I'm just pushing the edges right here so this kind of pops up a little more. Just use my finger to smooth it out. So we're almost to the point where I need to put a spout on there, a bottleneck. And there's a couple different ways I'll show you how to make a bottleneck on there. I can roll this around a little bit too. So I'm using the table kind of as a tool, like to change the form a little bit. Like I said, I want this to be a little bit loose, so just kind of knock it around a little bit so it just stays loose. It's not a super tight pot, and I don't want it to be. But let's go from here. All right, so now I got to think in terms of a bottleneck. So a lot of bottles have like a skinnier bottleneck, right? Some have bigger ones. And sometimes like a teapot would have something shaped kind of like this, like coming off the side like that. So you could make something like that. This is not going to look as good for something, if you put this on clay and cut it out, right, that shape doesn't really fit going this way because it's going to be bigger like that, right? And it looks more like something that's going to pour out this way. If I was doing something like this, then I could do it, but I'm not going to do that. But I'm just kind of showing you how by showing you the form. Like I would cut out a paper form, put it on a slab of clay, trace it out, cut it, fold my clay over, and it's going to fold differently in paper because you're not going to have that little seam, so it's going to be more round. So I don't know if you can see that or not, but if you attach it like that, and so it's going to have a skinnier part here and more of a belly right here, so like liquid would collect here and then go out that way, but we don't need that. So here's one that I already made. I think it's going to be too big for this one, but I can kind of show you how would make that. Right, you can see it's hollow, it's got some shape and some design. The design kind of matches the design on the pot. I mean, it's not bad, but it's kind of clunky for me. Like I want something a little different on there, right? But again, it's not bad. The way I did it is, I'm going to show you how I did it with this. So move this out of the way. So I'm going to start out with a coil. This one is a little bit tapered, right? You can make them straight if you want, like not tapered, but I'm going to go a tapered look. Stretch it out a little bit. Get the top and the bottom flat. Clean up any outside things. Like if you want it to be smooth, like now's a good time to start. So now I'm going to take a stick. Anything round will do. Like if you use a pencil or something, it's going to be a little small, but I have this, so try to center it up on the top of this coil, and I'm going to push it straight down. And the straight up, you want to hold it with your hand so it doesn't, and if you angle it, you're going to end up with the hole off center, and that's not going to work out too great. It's hard to get it exactly in the center, but the end of a wooden spoon works too if you have one that nobody's using. Let's go all the way to the bottom. And that's pretty close to the center. So now I'm going to take this, because it's on here, I can push it in a little further. I'm going to roll this. Try to put even pressure on and just roll it. If I want to get this part a little thinner, I can put a little more pressure on that side. Stretch it out a little more. Leaving one side still smaller, right? So I like this view better than that, right? I don't want to put this on top of there. That doesn't look as good to me. So I want, if I want to make a bottle, I'm going to do it something like this. So now I'm going to stretch this out a little bit with my finger. I'm going to end up cutting the top at an angle so it comes off a little cleaner. But for right now, let's go ahead and put a couple little designs on. So I want something that kind of matches. So I'm going to use the edge of this table. Let's get some good little designs on there. All right, nice twist. So now I'm going to cut the top part, clean it up a little bit. Just going to use an X-Acto knife. So I'm going to cut it at an angle. I'm just moving the clay through the blade. I'm not moving the blade because I don't want to cut the table that I'm on. I can take that off. So now I've got this slightly angled look. So I'm going to hold it in my hand and just do a little pinching here. Now I'll take a damp sponge and I'm going to work around the edges. So I'm spread my fingers out this way, overlap the lip here, and just start to smooth it out. If it's not straight, cut it so it's straight. If you want it straight. I mean, if you don't, then that's a choice, right? Whatever you do, make it look intentional, right? If it doesn't look intentional, then it looks messy, right? So now I'm holding here, I'm not releasing a lot of pressure here. I'm taking my finger, moving it around, so that's gonna stretch that lip out a little more, so it kind of makes it kick out this way some. And this starts to definitely get a little closer to, something like that, right? It's definitely getting closer. I could have made it skinnier, right? This is a little fat, but so the way I did this one is basically the same, except I took another, like a rolling pin, and I put it on here like this and rolled it that way. So it makes like the center part indented. So it creates that kind of shape, right? So that's a little different. But this one, I like the look of that better for this pot, but it's still not exactly what I want. So I'm gonna try a different one. So you can always, you wanna cut it so it fits the pot, right? So it sits up straight. Now there's another way to do this. Similar steps, but then it's gonna be kind of like when you pull a handle, but I'm gonna pull the spout. We'll see how this one works out. This one's gonna end up being skinnier. So I'm really showing you a lot of ways to come up with a spout that you can make. Also got a slab that I'm going to show you how to cut them out. You can kind of make one that way. All right, I'm going to cut some of this off. Now I'm going to go with the stick again, and because it's skinnier it gets a little trickier, but hope for the best. A little off on this one, but that's alright. So now you can roll it just a little bit just to get it a little more even. Then I'm going to start to pull it back on here. I'm going to cut this straight to start with. One side a little bigger. It's okay if it's a little loose. So I'm going to hold this, and now I'm going to use my water bucket. Get a small one. So now I'm going to hold this over just like I would a handle and start to pull it. I'm going to go ahead and start putting a few little ridges on here. I'm using my thumb and pulling straight down because I'm going to twist this. So I want those ridges to form some lines that spiral around. Now, I don't know if I'll use it, but we'll see how it goes. All right. So now I'm going to cut the top part. Now, not sticking enough. Kind of want it to stick to twist it, but if it's not sticking enough. All right. So I'm going to cut this part. Again, hands are a little wet. So now you can see I'm starting to get that twisted look on the side, like right in there. So I'm also gonna stretch this part out a little bit, smooth it out. I can stretch this part out too. So I could do this, you know, I could make it so it's like one of these, right? Or I could do it like this, which I kind of like this. For this is like a really small bottle neck. Not a lot of liquid is going to come out or go in, but again, this bottle is kind of more for effect, you know, just a look instead of pure function. We'll set that aside. Get these out of the way. I'll get the slab out. I'm going to get this a little thinner. So now I'm going to cut this one pretty straight. I'm going to go ahead and cut this side at an angle. So I cut it at an angle so when it rolls over, I can attach it. I probably cut that at a wrong angle, but let's do it this way. I can always roll it out and make it fit better later. Let's make it a little shorter. Take this. This is just going to be straight, right? So roll it over. It's also really fat, but I just want you to be able to see it, how to do it. Now I'm going to make it a little funky. I'm just going to draw a line there. Like that. Do a quick score over here. Quick right across here. Water. Alright, now straighten it up a little bit. Keep it tight on there. I just wanted to keep that line because I like it, right? For no other reason. Take a little roller, take that edge down. Alright. Again, this is really big. Like, this thing is too big for what I'm doing. Now I can take it, just drop it. That gives me a little fatter, and it kind of loosens up that cylinder a little bit. You can obviously cut this thing to shape, but so now I have a little bit bigger space that I could attach this to. This is a big one, right? So if I wanted it, I would probably want it smaller or have a giant bottle that goes onto, right? But that's just another way. So that's a lot of different ways. So I think I'm gonna go with the one that I pulled. So I'm gonna go ahead and place it on here. First, let's look at what we got. A little closer, right? So I want to look kind of all the way around. I don't have to put this in the exact center of this bottle, right? I'm going to, but I could cut it and angle it and put it off to the side, and that works too, right? Kind of bend it a little bit, that'll work. But I'm gonna go with just right here in the center, just for simplicity. So I'm gonna go ahead and trace where that is. Now you can't really put this on if you haven't let the top sit a little bit and get a little stiffer, because the whole curve will collapse. All right, so I've drawn that, scored real quick. I'm just scoring that whole space because a lot of times I will put these on and then knock the hole out with another dowel. Like I'll get a smaller rod of some kind and push it straight through until I punch a hole in there. Or if you have like some hole trimmers, you can stick in there. But this time I'm actually gonna cut out a hole first because this is stiff enough it'll hold up. So I'm gonna hold my knife at somewhat of an angle so the plug doesn't fall down in there. Now that's the problem with the way I do it. But sometimes glaze will just stick it down in the bottom and it doesn't really matter because nobody will ever see that. All right, so now I have a small hole there. A little bit of this, a little bit of that. Get a little bit of pressure. So I'm just gonna work this bottom seam together. So what I'm going to do is end up putting a little more clay on there to finish the bottle off. I just think it adds a better look. It looks a little more what I'm going for. I could, if you clean that up good enough, it'll look okay like that, but it's not what I want. So I'm going to take some nice soft clay here. And a pretty even coil. Now I can wrap this around. Now I'm going to push this in place. So I had some slip already on there and I just wet this coil down. So it's going to stick, and as much pressure as I'm going to put on this, it's going to work out all right. So now I'm just taking my thumb and finger and just working this down. I don't want it to be that thick. So I'm gonna end up making it look like it's part of the bottleneck and not so much part of the pot. Take a sponge. way to get a straight edge. You can use your card for something like this, like that would work. I'm just gonna use this because now I'm putting a little I'm gonna angle this and put a little pressure here. So I'm trying to push a little more clay towards the spout and flatten out my coil a little more. So now that space between the spout and this ring that I just put on there is pretty much gone. Take my sponge again, clean it up a little bit. I like this shadow line there. So I like seeing that it was constructed and put together, right? That's a choice that you make when you're making something like this. So I'm gonna go ahead and straighten that just a little more. It's kind of like a stem, like the way it's twisted, like a pumpkin. Now I'm gonna come back on the outside real quick. Lines. I'm just flattening that out a little bit. So now I've kind of squared it up. So just very little. Right, so now it's got a couple more sides to view. I don't like that. All right, it's a little straighter. So I could end up, putting like a little handle or something, like make it like a jug. So, but that's how I do that. And this is a similar type bottle that I made a while ago. Like it's pretty tall, but it's also a lot skinnier than this one. But you can see the detail in the spout, the way it twists around. I put a handle on there. See it. It's a really decorative piece. I mean, you could use it if you wanted to, but so I just made some cuts here and there with my blade, just to give it some definition, a place for a glaze to kind of pool and run. Things can collect, and the amount of glazes that I put on here, a lot of this stuff will still show up, so it doesn't really disappear. Now the last thing I'm going to show you with this, that's kind of a long demo, but so we got to address the bottom, because right now it's just straight, like this part right here just kind of goes right down. There's no bevel or anything on the bottom, so I'm gonna go ahead and get a board. So I don't cut my table. Use any kind of blade that you can. I'm gonna put it in at an angle, and I'm gonna trim away the bottom. So I want there to be separation from the table that the bottle sits on and the bottle itself. Give it some lift, just a shadow line. So I'm gonna cut at an angle. And rotate this bottle through there. Up, off. I didn't need this cut to be super straight either, because the bottle's not super straight. I want it to match the bottle itself. But now there's a shadow line there, so it gives it a little more lift. It doesn't look like it's just growing out of the table. Now if I need to, I can come in my card and I can clean that up a little bit. I want to do all this stuff now, so when the pot's dry, I'm not creating a lot of dust by smoothing it out. I'm going to make sure everything's smooth right now. There's no hard edges. And that's my bottle demonstration. Any questions?